And we're live. How's everybody doing tonight?
What's up, guys?
Hey guys, how's everyone doing? I'm doing great.
Yeah, you're looking comfortable. Thanks for getting dressed up for the occasion.
Well, you know, I try to do as much service as I can for this very popular podcast and all of our 1,700 subs, so here I am.
So, unlike Voultar, I'm grammatically correct and doing well.
Go back to Canada, you fuck.
I'm already in Canada.
I know!
Well, you got a working post office again up there now, finally, so that's cool.
Well, no, I mean, they were forced back to work with special legislation, but they vowed to fight it in court, so... Damn it, I've got a lot of dev kits on order, and I'm anxiously awaiting to start using them.
And Tanglewood.
And Tanglewood. I'm sure a lot of other people in Canada, like at least a dozen of us, no, probably a lot more, are waiting for copies of Tanglewood.
I just don't understand. I just don't get it. You know, people go on strike like that. I pay a lot of money. I have nothing to do with this strike. I paid a lot of money to ship something, and it doesn't arrive for a month and a half.
Yeah, we've actually had to be smart about that. Like when we send things up to Canada, we've been using FedEx and UPS very intentionally lately to avoid that stuff.
So
FedEx
so
has been good.
this is what Tanglewood looks like, Renee. So maybe you'll get it. I got this.
Well, I have obviously I have the ROM and I can play the game, but it's just I want the real cart before I actually play and beat it.
This instruction manual came out really well, actually.
Yeah, that's what caused some delays, right? He had to get that all squared away and printed.
Yeah. They said out of all the things that could go wrong, since the printing of the manual was the one that he thought would have been the thing to not go wrong.
Yeah, right. It's always something like that.
Well, when I saw that post, I hadn't heard from him in about 2 weeks. He usually kept tabs on, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that with the carts. Then all of a sudden he goes, manufacturing issue has been delayed. And I'm thinking, oh shit, I hope the carts are fine. I hope it's not my end.
Soldering jumper wires onto those boards.
I got that same shirt, Renee. Mine's just, bigger.
We should take a look and see what kind of
crap he jammed into it.
What kind of douchebag made this circuit board
clearly
did it correctly.
What kind of Moby-looking motherfucker made that?
Armchair engineering right there at its best.
We've been through this. It's William Patrick Corgan.
That's what he says, on the local radio station. It's like, hey, this is William Patrick Corgan. You're listening to whatever.
No, that's right. They're from Chicago. Did you ever see the Smashing Pumpkins live?
No, but I listened to their final concert live on Q101 in Chicago when they did that from the Metro, I believe.
Well, they've done final concerts quite a few times.
The first final concert.
Looks good.
Look at that. It's bezeled.
Hey, is that a 27? Is that a 27322?
Yeah.
I thought there was flash memory on there.
No, Matt wanted a board that had the look and feel of a classic game. He wanted it to be as heavy as one of those mask ROMs.
Damn.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool,
this
Renee.
is a fucking interview?
Fuck no.
I don't know if you're familiar, but this db-electronics.com seems like he's...
Oh, there he is.
Weird. I lost internet briefly there. Whoop. I think we're back. Are we good? Good?
I don't know. Let me refresh the stream here to see if it's reconstituted itself. I think we're okay. Yep, we're back.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Lost internet for a second. Anywho.
Where did we leave off?
I was talking about our extremely low failure rate.
Oh yeah, really... 0.1% failure rate on the boards, right?
Yeah. So I had the factory validate the ROM before they soldered it, obviously. Then afterwards, and then Matt had a few UMD units, and he would verify byte for byte every single byte of the ROM before installing it in a cartridge shell. So it was triple check. So out of all that pass, one failure. So we're pretty. I mean, I think that's an excellent record. I told him to expect a lot higher than that, so he was pretty pleased. So.
Do you know where he's sourcing these Gamebit screws from?
I have no idea where he sourced the rest.
Yeah, you can get those off Alibaba and AliExpress because I bought a bunch of them.
Didn't anybody ever tell your redneck ass not to talk with food in your mouth?
Bob, has anyone ever told you to stop eating?
Touché, sir. Touché.
People are saying it's down again, but I'm seeing good.
No, we're down.
What the
Really?
hell's
I
going
would
on?
suggest buffering this, like reloading then.
Should we enact the contingency and let Bob stream this?
Oh God.
Looks good on my end.
It's down for me. Let me refresh.
Yeah, it's working for me.
Nick, is your computer doing some Windows updates again?
Okay, it came back up. We're up.
No.
Well, that'd be funny as hell if that was just Nick's computer Windows updating.
Paid a scientist my cock.
Yeah. Well,
All right, let's get this over with before it goes down again.
Yeah. Let's
let's get to our topics.
let's squeeze in everything into 30-second bites while we have internet. Cool. Who wants to talk about something first?
I'll go first.
Yeah. What's new in your life?
So, a lot of things have happened lately. A lot of good things in life. I am What, Steve?
Did you clean the gutters?
I did clean the gutters at my mother-in-law's house. I have gutter guards, but she doesn't. We've got a lot of new products available. The open source Sega RGB. I'm selling those, and those have been doing very well. And I've got a lot of nice feedback. People are really enjoying these. They're enjoying the simplicity of it. That's doing great. And the latest design files will be hosted at Retro RGB's failing website. As a matter of fact, he already has those Gerbers, so those are going to be put up. But a lot of this has been fantastic. I'm glad I did a small run of these because even though I've given these away for free, not everybody necessarily has the tools or the skills to do all the surface mount soldering. So that was nice. The Duo RGB version 0.69, that has been discontinued, and it's been gone for 3 or 4 months, maybe 5 months. And people have been asking me, "Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? Are you never doing them again?" Well, the truth of the matter is, I just did a complete and total redesign, as Bob's showing you, of that circuit. The video amplifier is designed in a completely different way. I learned a lot of cool things that are really niche to the PC Engine analog video family, and a lot of the things that I learned from working on the SSDS3 and what a godforsaken nightmare that was, I applied to the board that Bob's holding, and also moved to 0402 packages and did a bunch of other little stuff like that. But that's now available, and that's been available, and the feedback to this has been phenomenal. And I really appreciate everybody who's emailed me and has thanked me, and I've thanked them obviously for making this available. There's a lot more going on this circuit than its predecessor, and it's even smaller. So I think that's kind of sexy.
And the tantalum caps are safely arranged so that this will not catch fire inside your console.
That's right, and I don't time my outputs low. So at any rate. Another thing that I've finally done, and this is something we talked about several months ago, things just got in the way and what have you, but the Capcom Classics to JAMA interface, that's finished, and these are actually available now for sale. These will work in real arcade machines. Naturally, they'll work with Super Guns, obviously. The list of games that it supports is silked on the back here. I had one of these sent to me, made by somebody else, and it was auto-routed to hell and back, and the video had a lot of crippling noise issues because of the way things were.
Wait, when you say one of those, you don't mean your design. You meant you had somebody else send you their design.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's really why I made this thing to begin with, because the options that were made available to me that I was able to sample, with all due respect, they just weren't very good. A lot of things were compromised because they just, in my opinion, from what I saw, they were not done correctly. So having said that, this is ready and this is available on the store. So if you want to play Ghouls and Ghosts, Gunsmoke, Legendary Wings, and you don't want to hack up a wiring harness and do a bunch of wiring, this will take care of all of your sexual needs. Excuse me. Other than that, Adam Zay. You may know him as, what is the guy? What is his handle? What does he go by?
Gus Paz?
Yeah, Gus Spaz. He is going to be, once again, he will be my international supplier. And that's people are like, hey, you're not doing it, are you? You're fucking him. No, I only fuck myself. But the point is before I send, it's a pretty lofty shipment that I'm sending him. But I don't have enough DIN connectors, the good DIN connectors. There's a difference. You can get shitty ones or you can get good ones. I never send shitty DIN connectors. But I don't have enough DIN connectors for the Duo RGBX. I'm waiting for the good ones to come in so they can be sent along with them. I'm not doing multiple shipments because that's going to be very expensive for him and for me. So international stuff, yeah, guys, it's absolutely happening. I just have to make sure that he gets everything that he needs so that you guys get everything that you need. It only makes sense to wait. So really, other than product updates and new products I'm still working on, like the Neo Geo, yes, it's still happening. It's just been a very busy time. And the Game Boy Afterburner, the Afterburner Advance, or the Burner Advance.
What about the DataPath adapter?
The DataPath adapter. Okay, so here's an update on the DataPath adapter. I talked to a few people, and I've taken some liberties and I've made some changes. Initially, the DataPath adapter was just a translation interface. There was no logic, there were no active components, but we're changing things. The DataPath capture interface will include filtering for SD content, and it will include filtering for ED, erectile dysfunction content. So if you're using a 240p source, you'll have a proper Mrs. Butterworth's filter to mitigate aliasing and to trap the frequency content that you don't want in that low bandwidth video. And if you have a GameCube or if you have some other 480p device that you want to interface to your DataPath card, but you don't want to get the nasty noises, there will be a 16 megahertz, or there'll be a filter there that will be appropriate for 480p content and 480p band. So the interface is definitely still happening. I'm still confused by Steve's research and Bob's research and what that Extremes guy and what that Dark Aries of his Dark Aries has a really good Discord channel where it's nothing but capturing. It's all about capturing technology.
And he's got a wiki that he's just starting with some great fucking info on there too.
And he's got a lot of comprehensive stuff, and Dark Aries knows what he's talking about when it comes to, especially like the DataPath stuff. And I'm telling you, the stuff that Dark Aries sent me runs counter to what Steve's found and what you have found. He gets really good analog captures directly from the DataPath, and I don't know. And he's doing the same bandwidth tests that Steve was doing, or that Bob was doing. And visually, there's a stark contrast between Bob's captures and his captures, and he's obviously doing something right. So a lot of people were saying, well, since the DataPath sucks for SD bandwidth, for directly interfacing that, why bother with the DataPath? But because of Dark Aries, I'm moving on with it because he's showing me that the DataPath is clearly capable of doing very high quality captures of 240p content. So we have him to thank. Thank you, yes, Dark Aries, for your help.
And with his help, I did verify. I did a little bit on one of the last streams that we did, I think a month ago, but I also did verify that if you do the settings the way he describes, where you have to go in and then hit cancel, and then it's very weird sometimes for 240p. So in actuality, Steve wasn't wrong, because if you use the software as if it's, as it's supposed to be used, it fails. But if you do the trick where you kind of mess around with the software, then it starts to work fine. So that was the problem. So capturing the, and he was also talking about for certain content, capturing the screen, like the actual window of the vision window, might be much better for people than trying to just accept it through OBS. And Fuda told me about Amarek. Once again, it was on Dark Aries' Discord channel that I downloaded the free version and it would not go out of, I don't know who's doing that, but that's rude. I was, you guys don't hear that noise either?
What?
Oh, then there was feedback. I'm sorry. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But the free version of Amarek would record in 30 frames per second, no matter what you do. So it was somebody on Dark Aries Discord that sent me the newest version to test, and it works perfect. So the next thing I want to do is use Amarek to capture Super Nintendo, using the correct settings to see if the bandwidth test passes. So never opening the vision window at all, just doing it through Amarek.
I was going to say something too. I was poking around in Dark Aries' Discord chat a few weeks ago, and the great Duke was there. And the Duke has bought a little computer, and he's got a datapath card, and he's doing direct captures with his NES RGB kit. And somebody sent him, Bob, an application that was designed by somebody, a community member, within this past year, or maybe very recent. But it's an application that's designed to work directly with the datapath cards, and it fixes. Maybe I'm saying this wrong. Maybe Extremes could talk about it in chat. But it's an application that lets you make adjustments to the datapath parameters without using the Vision window interface. Like, you have control, and I think that fixes a lot of those problems that you kind of have to trick or obfuscate in order to get the good capturing out of it. Maybe I'm saying that wrong, but I meant to get the name of that damn piece of software because I think it's really important, but maybe Extremes could talk about it. I didn't know if you knew about it or not, Bob, but it seemed to, I think that piece of software addressed some of those problems.
I didn't, and I'd love to try it.
I bet you would like to try that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So what are you going to do with the original version of the datapath board then? Just the basic pass-through?
I don't think there's anything I'm going to do. What I'm going to do with the original version is I'm going to I'm updating it. I'm updating it to include the Mrs. Butterworth's filters and to do a few other things. But I don't think there's any sense in releasing that when here, hopefully within a couple of months.
Oh, I respectfully disagree. And I ran into a problem. I talked about it for 1 second on the weekly podcast, but it was Tech Monkey X, and Fuda who both told me about this. I was getting crazy issues with capture. In fact, I lost 2 full days on the Game Boy Advance HDMI video as a result. Mm-hmm. And one of the main problems was all of my whatever to DVI converters were shit. So HDMI to DVI, VGA to DVI. So having your board and just using a really nice shielded DVI cable, that would have solved a lot of that problems for me. Just having a board with a DVI output.
I think it's a bad approach. I think you just shouldn't have 2 SKUs. If you want to just go to DVI, you can get a couple of adapters.
The Amazon adapter, this one sucks. I'm throwing every one of these out as soon as this podcast is over. And this one, this is just, I think this was an ATI. I think this is what came with like the ATI video cards. Also sucks a lot.
Here's the thing, Bob. C just said it. I really don't want to balkanize that product with a subset of products when that's just more for me to keep up with. It makes sense to get all, I don't want it to be one of those things where I have a product and I decide I want it to be a little more polished or I want to add more features, and here we are 6 years later and it still doesn't materialize or exist. But I think that I have enough of a handle on this to where it's simple enough to where I can add the appropriate filtering for SD and ED content and get the thing out timely, so that it's much better to wait and do that than to release just this pass-through device, because what are you going to do for the people that want to directly interface their game consoles to a capture card that has no aliasing filter?
Yeah, this is very important, especially with the GameCube stuff coming out. There's none of those filters on the output, so you're going to need it on the input of your data path to do it properly.
Yeah, so I don't think that releasing the old one is warranted at all, even as a pass-through device, because you're still going to have, regardless, you're not addressing a serious issue it's not the data path's fault. It's just the fact that the data path doesn't have it, doesn't possess it. But
Okay, fair enough.
It's a fundamental thing to include, and it's missing from the data path, so he's adding it in. It's supposed to be there, but it's not. So he's adding it in.
That's
so
right.
two very quick things on this. One is if anybody's ever used the program K-Lite Codec Pack, it was actually Extrems that helped me figure this out. On one computer, no matter what software, what settings, anything, it always would compress to 420. And on my laptop, it wouldn't. And it was because of an automatic update for K-Lite Codec Pack. I uninstalled it, and then Amarek also started, not working perfect. I think that might have been a lot of the problems in some of my videos previously, where in the past month, maybe even the Wii video, where things were compressed, where all my settings said they weren't. But the question I have for you, smart fuckers, is why is it? Why is it that a fucking 1-inch piece of adapter with solid, with the whatever, I don't think it's gold, but whatever the plating inside, I would have never guessed that this could have caused so much trouble, because it's just pass-through. Is it just that the pins are too thin and you can't handle the bandwidth?
Crack it open and take a look at it.
Maybe it's cold solder. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's just a really bad joint.
But he was saying
making it high impedance.
He's got multiple of them that suck, right?
Every one of them are shit. I have every one of these. I bought like a 5-pack, and even ones. I don't know where it is, but it looks exactly like this. But one end is HDMI and the other end is DVI. Even that one sucks.
Maybe it's the ground that sucks.
Ooh, because it was only when I bought whatever to DVI, like with my camera. When I bought the micro HDMI to DVI cable, it was still a cheap cable. It was still a $7 cable. Flawless, no problems. When I started using DVI to HDMI cables instead of dongles, all problems went away.
I don't know. I mean, split one apart, get a Dremel or something, and split one down the middle, and let's take a look at it.
I shall do that at another time. Thank you. I will.
But I did want to say something, because we were talking about bandwidth, and this is a little off topic, but I just wanted to get this out because I don't want to forget it, because I think it's important. Mm-hmm. Your captures, when you compared Woozle's GBA output to Extrems is sort of his fake 720.
There were no comparison videos in there. That was just examples, but continue.
Okay, well, the comparisons, I was kind of surprised to see that Extrems his 720, his crippled 720 output looked really good.
So it wasn't his crippled 720. That was direct in the HF mode through HDMI. That was scaled through Premiere. I actually tried, I took both, because this was not meant to be a comparison. This was just meant to show all the options and to show people what to expect. I actually took that and upscaled it in Virtual Dub to 4K. And the files were like 70 and 75 gigs each, because I wanted to do that with Woozles and that with Extrems to try to make it perfect. And Premiere crashed at that point during rendering twice. So I had to just leave it the way it was with the basic, and let Premiere render it, not Virtual Dub.
I'm sorry to hear that you're being deceptive with your analysis and captures, but I will say, I'll say that the Extrems' output, man, when you ran it against the. Oh my God, the GBI software is phenomenal. Like visually,
I've been saying that for years.
Right, but I was expecting, I was expecting there to be not a stark contrast, but a difference. But oh my God, it's really good. Extremes, I was going to tell you, it's really good.
Hell yeah, and the only reasons that I haven't done an in-depth video on it, the number one reason, I'd say at least 75%, is the hardware still isn't quite there. So maybe by February, when the Eon's readily available, and when both of the insurrections, the direct component or just the plug-and-play cheap HDMI, when that stuff's available, now we're talking hundreds of dollars less than it was 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. So that is the biggest thing. That's when it's going to start to be the much more feasible. And also, I think Extrems himself said that he's making some, the eventual goal is to make it a little bit more user-friendly. And it's probably 6 months away, maybe more. I'm sorry, Extrems. I forgot when you said that you were looking for the target date on that. But I think that would be, if people, dumbasses like me, who I've been writing batch files since I was like 4 years old, I don't want to fucking do it anymore. I want a GUI. So when,
Right.
spoiled brats like me, or all millennials that don't know how to write code, or ones that know how to write better than, but whatever. When that becomes a lot more user friendly, that's when I think I'm going to do another huge video like that, where I spend a ridiculous amount of time, and maybe I'll learn how to do pre-rendering a little bit better, so I could really show what that looks like in 4K, because it's killer.
Yeah, I mean, forgive my ignorance, but I don't understand what the hang-up is with writing a front end for the software. I mean, I don't know, but if it had a nice sort of polished front end for the GBI software, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm not smart enough to answer that. You guys write GUIs though.
If it's so easy, you should just do it, Zach.
You got told.
I've got more important things to do, like organizing my sock drawers.
like getting paid to get us to buy more piece of shit junk soldering equipment.
How's that station treating you over there, Bob? I hope it's helping your abysmal technique.
Honestly, I just took it out of the bag. It's smaller than I expected, which is good because I have no fucking room left here, and I'm excited to use it. And by the way, I know I said this on the podcast today, but I really love how you took the thing apart and explained, so anybody who is even half paying attention could understand that just because it looks like this case doesn't mean it has those guts in it. Thank you for taking the time to do that.
Yeah, and that was really important because they look identical. Cosmetically, a lot of these look identical, but what's inside is a big fundamental difference. And I would never, guys, the crappy ones that I saw, it's not even that they were crappy, they were goddamn dangerous, and I would never recommend that shit. That's why I took it apart. And I wanted, I'm not going to recommend something that I don't personally use. I don't use my Hako stations anymore. For the past month, really, I've been using this damn thing, and I love it. There's no reason for people who want to get and start into the hobby and are a new player to spend hundreds of dollars on a soldering station when they can get something that's honest to God, just as good for the most part, and still have money in the bank. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
That reminded me of these. I think Steve has seen quite a few of those. Yeah. You could buy. You could even buy the ones that say Porta on them. They even say Porta. You buy 10 of them, you might have 4 different kinds of guts in there.
Yeah.
Hey, a shout out to John, who owns Tasty Chicken in Benstonhurst, who just super chatted us $10 towards Nick's Model 1 fund. John actually showed up before and dropped off a shitload of food for everybody who was working, and it was fucking delicious. So thank you, John.
Yeah, go visit John's Tasty Chicken. I'll have to get their logo so I can make them a sponsor on an episode.
Oh, absolutely. We should do a totally fake, like really douchey promo for it. I think you'd love it.
Well, that's cool. Who wants to go next?
Well, I'll go, but I just wanted to say, I wasn't aware of any of this data path progress, so over the weekend, I'm curious to know how that was solved. So whenever you guys get a chance, and then. Zach didn't mention that Adams A/GuzPaz, that's retrostuff.ca. So,
I forgot. I think that's obligatory for Steve to say that because I think that he sells rectal vision cables. Sorry, Adam. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, so a couple things I've been working on. If you guys recall, a common question we got on this podcast for questions is how do you make correct CSYNC out of H and V sync? And so I kept saying I'd do a blog post about it, and I started it, and I posted the first out of 3 parts, and it's really it's in depth because it's a more complicated subject than people might think it is. So that is on the HD Retrovision blog. But the other thing I want to talk about is something I've been working on is Dreamcast stuff. And so something
What are we giggling at?
Just the fact that he said he's working on Dreamcast stuff.
Oh.
So one thing I was trying to do was I was trying to simplify some logic using a microcontroller instead of some hard logic because I found a AT Tiny 4, which was a SOT 23-6, 6-pin SOT 23. And it's a tiny thing, has built-in oscillator and stuff like that. And this is where I learned the pitfalls of using ceramic-based oscillators versus crystal oscillators, because I was trying to do like a really precise timed event. And on the scope, I was getting all sorts of crazy jitter, and I thought like my code was busting. I was like going through my code, trying to figure out what's going on, and then, just normal troubleshooting, you think of, you reanalyze your approach, and you're like, maybe it's something with the RC oscillator that's built in. And so I grabbed a crystal one from my drawer here, and I popped it in, and then dead solid. It was zero jitter. So I wasn't able to use the microcontroller for that, but it was a good learning point that if you need really precise timing for stuff, that you can't skip out and use built-in oscillators. But built-in oscillators are great for tons of things, like any human-based event where like nanoseconds don't matter, even microseconds might not matter, then they're great. But if you're trying to do some really precision stuff, you're going to need a crystal, and then crystals are noisy and stuff. So you have just a whole design choice thing.
Just to add to that, Steve, some of the MCUs I'm looking at now, like the built-in oscillators have a tolerance of plus minus 1%, which is huge when you compare it to a crystal, which might be like 100 parts per million or 10 parts per million, depending on how much you want to spend.
Yeah, and when I first look at that spec, I'm like, oh, okay, so I don't need it to be exactly 8 megahertz. It's fine if it's 7.9, but the thing is, it's always changing.
Yeah.
It's not like it's going to start within that window and just stay in that spot. It's going to drift all along that window, and that's the problem I was having. It was just constantly drifting around, and I was getting all sorts of crazy jitter. So it's just a nice lesson that I learned about for precision things. You got to throw a crystal down.
What frequencies were available on the internal RC? 1, 2, and 4 and 8, or like just 2, 4 and 8, or?
The internal there was 2 internals. There's the real-time clock one, which is the kilohertz one.
Yep, yeah.
And the main one is 8 megahertz.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so
they're very.
I replaced it. I mean, I had it on the scope with 8 megahertz, and it was going crazy. And then I changed the code to switch to the pin that had the crystal. Right when I pushed that, then the scope was solid.
Well, so now that you can't use a microcontroller faithfully, what are you going to do?
Oh, I solved the problem.
Good.
That was just one of the 4 options I could do. So I narrowed that down actually on Halloween, is I just was here for 12 hours, and I plowed through all the options.
Okay. I'm proud of you.
Right on.
I really enjoyed that blog post, by the way, Steve. And I wish I could sit here and pretend like I understood it the first time. I had to read it twice. I did understand it, but I did... and it wasn't your explanation. You did a good job writing it. That sounded like a dig, and as much as I love to tease you fuckers, no, that absolutely was a great written thing. It just was really confusing. So
yeah, it's a confusing topic.
Yeah.
Did you at least enjoy the... Yeah, go ahead.
What I think doesn't help, I only realized this after we posted, is I guess when you're talking about the pulse, you're talking about the down part when it's low, which is kind of confusing because a lot of times... I mean, I guess naturally I think of the high part being the
I mentioned that. I covered that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. It's just a confusing...
Yeah.
Like in my brain, it naturally wants to think of the pulse as the time it's spent high.
Yeah, almost like on, off,
exactly.
On, off, when it's actually information on both sides.
But I mean, I did mention that. Like, I linked to the SYNC jitter article, which explains that it's the downward edge.
Yeah,
That's the pulse.
Yeah.
It's funny because so many of the Dreamcast solutions, the analog solutions, don't work on D series BVMs, and of course A series or this little thing I have here. I bought that specifically because it's not compatible with most things. I want to test solutions on that, and it's a lot of it could be solved if if you fix the things that you talked about in that. So
Well, yeah, I mean, part two is going to go over like the implementations that many people use, even in very common places. Like I've seen it on dev boards from video chip manufacturers where they do these implementations that I think are incorrect. And I'll show that in the second one.
I mean, if you're just to Google how to combine that H and V sync, you're going to find so many places that
just put like twist the wires together, but put a resistor on one end. And sometimes that can't
they'll
happen.
do that at the 2-gate solution thing.
I think it's important though to really provide a little context to that. The reason you find all of those pictures and all of those sort of similar explanations of how to combine sync is because that circuit where you see either it's a comparator or it's an OR gate where they're ORing the pulses back and forth to one another on one like quad OR gate. The reason that you see that so much and it's so prevalent is because I have monitors here from 1986 to now. And if you look on those monitors, it's pretty much the same circuit. Analog monitors really don't care as much about the precision, just like a CRT arcade monitor doesn't care so much about sync and vertical refresh. It's basically the same thing. And so it was a cheap way for a lot of these monitor manufacturers to sort of combine and split those pulses out. And that's why so many people reference that because, well, it was in this monitor from 86 and it was in a lot of monitors from 86, therefore it must be kosher to use.
Well, it's common in computing, and that's actually the point of the article is it's common in computing, but when you translate it over to TV land, then you get tons of problems because TV land is not expecting any of that stuff. So
that's right. That's right.
But Bob, did you at least like the ice cream flavors?
Yes.
Mint chocolate chip.
Funny, if you guys are going to throw in fat references, I actually like pizza and beer way more than any sweets. Cheese and beer, to be specific.
I wasn't specific. I thought it was funny putting ice cream flavors in. I got zero feedback on that. So.
Oh. Well, but that's one of those things where if nobody says anything, that means we enjoyed it. Whereas if we were like, oh, the ice cream, you idiot. Like, you know what I mean?
No, it doesn't.
So is part 3 of this going to be the pre-order link to where we could fucking buy your goddamn cables?
That's part
pre-order
4.
link? Our pre-order links go straight into the toilet, Bob.
Yeah.
We have a batch file that Chip deletes all that.
And by toilet he means my inbox.
That's right.
Cool. I don't have anything technical to talk about this week, I guess. I played The Last of Us over Thanksgiving. I haven't finished it yet, but...
no spoilers. Talk about it, but please no spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers. I was just going to say, it's a very different game than I was expecting. It's super slow and story-driven, I guess. And coming from Naughty Dog, where you spend like the entire Uncharted series like hiding behind things and blasting people, I was kind of like expecting that out of the game, and it's not that at all. But yeah, it's a game where I'm glad that I didn't judge it based on the first couple hours. Kind of like Breath of the Wild. Like if I had made a decision at like hour 3 whether I was going to keep playing, I would have said no, but I just kind of plowed through and it got better. I thought the start of it was pretty boring. So yeah, I'm gonna try to finish that maybe this weekend when I have a couple extra hours. And cool. Other than that, I ran a 50-mile race like a week and a half ago. So there's that. I feel like I'm still beat down from that a bit, but it was a pretty awesome experience. You get to this point when you're running that far where it's you think you're gonna like constantly get more and more tired and feel worse and worse as it goes, but eventually it kind of just like peaks out and you're like at a steady state feeling of atrociousness for like the last probably 25 miles, I guess. The second half of it didn't really get any worse, just felt miserable.
Now, Nick, did you ever feel like at any point while running this, regardless of the excellent peak shape that you're in, you're like, oh fuck, physically I don't think I'm going to be able to do this?
Yeah, I mean,
does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I've never gone that distance before. Like, I know at this point that I can do a marathon even if, like, the end of it is sucky and I feel like garbage. But yeah, going that distance, like, I thought there was a reasonable chance that I would drop out at some point in the race. But I think once I got to, like, probably mile 34 or 35, I knew I could finish. It was just a matter of trudging through it. It's also a lot different to run a trail 50-mile race than it is to run a road marathon. You kind of, everybody's walking. Like, even the people that win the race spend some time walking. So it's a totally different experience. But yeah, it took me 10 hours and 45 minutes of run/walking to finish.
Now that you've done it, do you feel like that's something that you would like to do again, or it was once enough for you?
I think once was enough, but I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say I'll never do it again. I don't think I would ever attempt the 100-mile distance. It just seems too ridiculous to me. But
if he signs up for another one, I'm going to start looking for a new business partner because I know that it's downhill for the company if he has mental problems like that.
Yeah. For now, I'm content just not running at the moment. So
I think the major issue for me running such a long distance would be just to deal with boredom.
You know, it's not that bad during the race, actually. Like, it's kind of like an evolving thing. Like, as you go, you kind of join up with different people and you chat with them along the way. It's not like a hyper competitive thing like a marathon where you're kind of like heads down at your max pace the whole time.
Yeah, I guess.
There's a lot of times where I just spent like walking and talking with people. This is kind of fun. And then like looking forward to aid stations every 4 miles, and it goes by.
Did you get massaged?
No, dude. If I would have gotten a massage like any time in the week after, I would have been in more pain than it was worth paying for. So I skipped out on it. I totally thought I was going to, but I was just, the day after was like the most pain I've ever been in. So I kind of skipped out on that. And
you don't believe in pre-stretching per activity, do you? You think that's a waste of time, don't you? Physiologically.
I don't think it's an injury preventer.
So here's one of the very few fitness-related things I actually have an opinion on, because clearly I don't really have much I can talk about, but there are people that are just shit at stretching. So, and these are, sometimes they're athletes, and sometimes they're dumpy fucks like me, but some people just can't grasp, like, how far you go before it's too far. So if you're, and I'm like that with guitar. Like, I watched the John Petrucci video where he showed all these things, and I know Zach's gonna love this, but sometimes I would yank my finger a little too far, and it would do way more damage than loosening up. So the best thing to do for people that are shit at stretching is do whatever it is that you're about to do really lightly and slowly. Start with some very slow basic scales on guitar. Just go for like a little brisk walk and then build up. That's what I was told by actual athletes, and it did help my guitar playing. Because every time I stretched, I'd go too far and then my hand would hurt and whatever else. So there you go.
Well, you know, stretching is all about discipline, Bob. And as we all know, it's, you know, well, let's not get into that, but
it's all in the reflexes.
That's right. That's right. So I taught Steve a lot of stretches. You know, a few years ago, I was really trying to get Steve committed to getting his legs conditioned in terms of a good stretching regimen. And I don't know if he's still doing the stretches that I kind of sent him, but you know, he's pretty tight. Steve's pretty tight in his hamstrings.
That is the single creepiest character that's ever been on TV.
Should have stretched those creamy hamstrings.
Oh, you do it so good. It's terrible.
Yeah. That is awesome.
Whoever swallows the most Tylenol PM wins.
Oh, you're the worst human ever. Oh.
We can settle this like young and sexy teenagers.
Jeez.
Okay, all right.
Renee?
Yeah, what have you been up to?
I've not been running 50 miles. I'll stick with my 5
Good
and
move.
10Ks because I'm a sane human being. But
I wouldn't go that.
no, I want to talk about the importance of not being a fanboy of any particular technology, because it can bite you in the ass sometimes. You can miss out on some really nice ICs for my situation. So I've been working on designing UMD version 2 for a few months now, like on and off on my spare time, just like I do with all other projects when Bob's not drilling me to design a triple bypass PCB.
Bob drills you.
That everybody loves. Thank you very much.
Well, that's why he came up here. He just, he came and he beat me for 2 days while,
That's
Cool.
exactly what happened. Renee was fast asleep, and he just opens his eyes, and I'm just right in front of him, like, "Where's the triple bypass?" Where are
And
we-
you're baiting him.
I thought you were joking when you sent me those text messages to come save you, so I didn't do anything.
yeah. So, yeah, I've been working on UMD V2, and I've been a microchip PIC fanboy since school, right? Because we used a lot of PIC 8 devices, well, PIC 12, 16, and 18 devices in school, and I just stick with that for the longest time because that's what I knew, and I knew how to use the environment really well, and I knew the peripherals, because knowing the peripheral I think is more important than actually knowing the actual core of the MCU. So I went with PIC32 initially on UMD version 2, and I didn't really research any other micros out there, and then I don't remember how it happened, but I stumbled upon STM32 datasheet, and I started looking at the feature set and all the nice things that this micro was offering, and then it just seemed to me like I had made the worst choice possible by picking a PIC32 device to go on.
You picked the pick.
Yeah, I picked the pick, and it was such a bad choice. I mean, so the goal of UMD obviously is to interface to a cartridge, right? And the STM32 has this really nice flexible static memory controller that exposes essentially the memory map of the micro directly to the outside world. So, with very, very minimal logic, I can actually have most of the cartridges interfacing to UMD V2 be part of the STM32's internal memory map. So you could use DMA to access the cartridge. It's probably going over a lot of people's heads, but that's really good as opposed to the way that I was going to do it on PIC32, which is essentially just a bit-panged interface. The other nice thing is the STM is supported by lots of nice and free tools because it's got an ARM Cortex in there, and ARM is all over the place except in microchip devices.
I don't know if it's an issue or not, Renee, but because you are no longer really bit banging that data across, and you have DMA access like that, that means really it's going to be a lot faster, though, too, right? For dumping big games like 32 megabit, 48 megabit, like SNES, like Tales of Fantasia. I think that's like a 48 megabit game. That would dump a lot faster on the V2 than the bit banging V1, wouldn't it, theoretically?
Oh, yeah, it's going to go a whole lot faster.
Much faster.
I'm actually going to be able to tweak it to the, as fast as the mask ROM or the EEPROMs can take.
Nice.
Right? Yeah,
So,
a lot of those are 120 nanosecond devices or 100 nanosecond devices.
Yeah, fast ROMs are 100.
Yeah, so there's fine grained control on the flexible static memory controller to say, exactly how many clock cycles there is in the read state and the wait state and the data setup and the hold times and whatnot. So everything is going to be tweaked to the max.
So how big are these newer games like Tanglewood and Xenocrisis for like production? That's huge.
Yeah, those
Like
those
being able
both
to.
are 32 megabit games or 4 megabyte ROMs, right? And with UMD V1, the fastest I was able to burn the ROM, well, it was about 100 seconds, I think. The theoretical maximum you can do with that chip is not. I think it was around 30 or 40 seconds. I have it written down somewhere in my notes, but because there's still like there's an algorithm you need to follow to write to flash, right? You need to write 55 and AA to a bunch of addresses, then wait, and then do the toggle bit to see if the data's been written. So all of that you still need to do, but I'm going to be able to do it at the theoretical maximum of the IC with the STM device.
Cool.
So the speed up applies to both going direct from computer to the cartridge memory. Does it also apply to that production mode where you temporarily burn it to the UMD and then you just can keep throwing in carts?
Yeah, I'm good. That'll be a lot faster too, because for that scenario, like you said, I burn the ROM directly to the UMD device to avoid the USB bottleneck every time. Because all these micros, they only have full speed USB, which is 12 megabits, right, as opposed to the 480 megabit high speed USB. Yeah.
Cool.
Sweet.
Very cool.
So that's the whole point is when you're speccing a new device, a new piece of hardware, always look at all the offerings out there, even if you're if you're in love with analog devices and they make the best op amps or whatever it is that they make, look at the other guys too. Make sure you look at the because you might be missing out on some nice technology. Like I obviously have a learning curve to go through STM32, but the product is going to be so much better in the end.
Yeah, I had the same thing. Like I'm typically a Xilinx guy, but I'm pretty good at not being a fanboy. I always look around, so I'm probably going to use a Altera CPLD for something, and so it just fit way better into the constraints of the project.
There you go. Another really nice thing about the STM device, I really think I need to mention this, is the PIC32 doesn't have a built-in bootloader. So actually, and I had already gone through the entire hassle of making my own bootloader and making sure it was working properly with my interface, and that it was supported by firmware on both Linux and Mac and Windows and so on. And it was such a pain in the ass to deal with those linker scripts and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, STM32 has built-in factory program bootloaders that support UART, SPI, SD, USB. All you need to do is set one pin, and then it automatically is waiting for firmware update on USB. You don't need to write anything. You don't need to deal with any linker scripts. The hex file that you write to it for production, or the hex file that you generate for bootload mode, is the same hex file. And there's already a bunch of applications out there that are already available to run those bootloaders, so I don't have to do anything. I thought that was great.
And also that means that the PIC32 is, well, the PIC32 is pseudo brickable, whereas the STM32 really isn't brickable.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah, because there's that factory program memory that you can't overwrite at all. I can see how for a major corporation who's trying to keep their devices closed, that could be a bad thing. But for me, who's trying to make an open source device, this is brilliant, right? There's absolutely no way to brick this. You can always go back to bootload mode and input a brand new hex file in there.
I have such an amazing appreciation for stuff like that. Do you guys remember when Linksys first started? I mean, it's a long time ago now, but they first started implementing that, where no matter what you do, including that open source, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank now, but that open source router for OpenDRT.
WRT.
Yeah, no matter what you do, you hold that button in and you could set it back. Like I love it when companies take the time to Bob-proof things, because people, my friends over the years have seen me, I've lost at least one, probably more like 3 or 4 devices just because of stuff like that, and it just seems like something that everybody should do in anything that could be bricked like that,
Yep.
That specific STM part, roughly, what's the cost per like 1K units?
I'm looking at, so right now I'm looking at using like a fairly big STM device. It's probably overkill for this application, but I'd rather overspec. I'm going to use an STM32F407, and this in 1K is about $10 Canadian, according to DigiKey.
You know, that's what operates the soldering station is an STM32 microcontroller.
Yeah, the STM32F1s are really popular, and there's a lot of Arduinos based around that. The F4s have like a higher clock frequency, and there's a bit more peripherals. The particular reason why going on such a like a high horsepower part, like this has 512K flash and 192K RAM, is because this particular model, sorry, not the 407, the 411, actually has a cryptography unit built in. So I want to use that to quickly calculate checksums and MD5 of ROMs, so they can you can quickly verify the integrity of your ROM and compare it against the sum on your computer.
Very cool. Very cool on that note. Very cool.
So you don't have to necessarily verify bit for bit the ROM as we're doing now, but you could just command the UMD to quickly run a some sort of checksum, whatever it is that these devices will do.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a memory. Like for the SNES, there's a memory address or a memory register that holds a checksum, right? That the SNES kind of uses for security too. So for the SNES, you could have the Mega Dumper do its checksum, and it could run what it calculates against the checksum that's found within that memory memory block in the SNES game. I think that's like an address F600 or something, or F6000 or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, like a lot of those game headers, like the Genesis has a checksum in it, and the Master System has a checksum in the header too. But those are just like 16-bit sums of all the bytes.
Right. That's
in the ROM. So it's not a particularly strong checksum. Like there's like a million ways for a byte to go, many bytes to go wrong somewhere, and for the sum to still equate to the same thing. Right.
That's true.
Which is why I think the cryptography unit is advantageous, because those hashes are very powerful in detecting single bit changes.
Yep, I agree. That's a good point. Very good point. Okay, group topics.
Did Bob go? Do we skip him again?
Sorry, Bob. Why does that happen every time?
Oh, it's because I like to go last, and everybody's tired of talking about this shit by the time it's my turn.
That's what it is.
So I'll be quick, and I'll transition into a group thing. I've clearly been spending every waking moment on that Game Boy Advance video. So many hurdles. The capture stuff I talked about before, so I won't repeat myself. It's a fucking pain in the ass to try to be a YouTuber and a website guy and something else. Shout out to Justin from Console Kits. I broke my website the other day, and he fixed it. Yeah, sorry. But one thing I figure that would kind of everybody could might be able to chime in on. It's not insulting you, Renee. I kind of got 90% of what you talked about, but that was a little bit over my head. I think everybody could grasp this one. I had a friend. I'm not going to drop a name only because I don't want to drag somebody in that wasn't told they were being dragged in. But they wanted to buy a PlayStation 2 off of eBay simply because it had a really awesome case. That's it, nothing else. And then he bought it. So there you go, 50% of the population. But he bought it.
49.
49, whatever. Love the ladies. This person is actually a he, and he bought it. And the seller immediately canceled the order and refunded his money and blocked him on eBay. So you can't email, you can't see any of the items, nothing. So he said, hey, will maybe I know this guy and I don't know him. Like, it was weird. Do you want to just buy this for me? I was about to buy something off of my friend anyway. So I was like, oh, perfect. It's about the same price. I'll just buy it for you. We'll call it even. I bought it. I bought it under my Retro RGB account, immediately refunded and blocked. So I'm like, oh, this other person is another retro gaming guy that people know. So I'm like, okay, all right, I think I know what's happening. These PlayStation 2s are being loaded with all illegal software. So I mean, I wouldn't have said anything, to be honest with you. I don't like that at all. I have friends that own game stores who I would love nothing more than to see them continue to keep those stores open forever. I myself pirate all the time, one at a time, and then if I like the game, I buy it. And if I don't, really glad I got to test it. Sorry I stole your shit for 30 seconds, whatever. But it's different, in my opinion. I could be wrong. I don't want to go into this debate again, but I genuinely feel like it is way different than one person downloading 1 or 2 ROMs, testing and then deleting, than saying, hey, I'm going to sell you for $300 200 games that you could have bought from that store that now you don't have to because I'm making this easy. So I honestly would have just looked the other way, but then I waited like half a day and I responded from my personal account, which you could kind of tell it's me if you know my name. So, and going back and forth, like, hey, I really want to buy this thing, but I actually only care about the case. What model comes up? Because there's a drop-down menu. I'll put the link in the description in a minute when I'm done telling the story. But I hit the drop-down. Is there something? Because I thought, let me give this guy the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you select the hard drive, you select the case. Maybe he's out of the case and just doesn't want to have to talk to people when he's selling illegal shit, right? He emails me back, no, I got it in stock, but you have to buy the full console. And I immediately email back, no, that's what I meant. Like, I'm happy to pay, just this is the console I want with a clear case. Can I just pick any hard drive? And he emails me back, yes. And I immediately buy it. And then, I think he emailed me back. I went to, like, make a cup of coffee. I came back, and I was blocked. I couldn't even buy it. So he knows he's doing something wrong, and he's from Stamford, Connecticut, which is weird because it says that's where I lived for 6 years. And when he canceled my other thing, there's a picture. I don't know, maybe it's a little bit too much doxing to put his picture in the chat, but I'll put it.
No, it's not.
But this, I don't know him. There is a modding store, which we may or may not talk about later, that's out of Stamford, Connecticut. It's not them. It's definitely not them. I've met them. This is not, unless they hired on a new person who's this guy, or the guy stole a picture of somebody else, which is even creepier. But point being, I didn't know how to handle it because my immediate, like, little fat kid that used to have to fight his way home attitude was like, oh, fuck this guy. I'm going to report him. Do you know you can't report somebody to eBay? For the record, I actually wasn't going to go all the way through with it. I would have just liked to have known that I could have, but you can't report somebody on eBay for selling something illegal. There's no place to do that.
Well, can you report them for canceling your orders? I remember.
So because he canceled my order, I could have reported. But if I was just somebody searching through eBay, then I can't just say, hey, this is illegal.
I do that all the time.
Because I remember eBay frowns upon people canceling orders after they're placed.
Yeah, but hold on a second. You're saying that you are unable to report an item for counterfeit, for fraudulent, because you know what? That's done all the time, and I've done that all the time, unless they've just taken that away like a couple of months ago, Bob. There's a drop down. You select, you put the bullet where the offense is. Was it a fraudulent item? Is it counterfeit? I've done that a ton of times, so I don't think it's right to say that you can't report items, period. You can.
Find yourself a link. If you feel like it, hold on, it's coming.
I reported a counterfeit SNES game that I bought just recently.
Yeah, that's different though, Renee. That is really fucked up. That is worse.
Well,
that in my opinion is worse.
I don't understand.
I don't know if that's necessarily worse, because how do you know that seller knew it was counterfeit? First of all, this guy has different price points for more games.
Yeah,
so he's
you
obviously
can get like the Arcade Fighters pack and like.
Yeah,
I just clicked it, Bob. I found a generic eBay auction. Do Control F to find report item. I clicked that, and now it's giving me a list of things I can choose from of what the offense is.
Well, I posted it in the chat. I guess I tried, and on eBay's own forums, eBay staff members basically said, like, you have to call up and fill out a report, and it's, whatever else. It basically seemed like they were definitely wanted to look the other way on almost everything. But this person does live in my old town, and because I bought it with my eBay account, he has my address. I think I linked my PayPal account to my P.O. box, but still. So I didn't want to go a little too far with it because, I just, like I said, I grew up in a really bad neighborhood, so I know what could happen if somebody's crazy enough. But yeah, I certainly don't have to have to beat somebody to death because I reported their stolen PlayStation 2 on eBay. But yeah, it's
Probably kick your ass, Bob. To be honest with you.
You're definitely right about eBay wanting to look the other way. There's like I discovered this maybe a couple of years ago. Whenever I go home to Chicago for Thanksgiving, on Black Friday I would stand out in line and get these bottles of Bourbon County Stout that Goose Island makes, and they're like a limited edition thing, and they're really nice bottles. And I was like, when I finished the beer, I was like, I wonder if anyone like collects these or wants them. So I went to eBay and checked it out, and they have all these bottles of beer on eBay, but they're all listed as quote unquote cellared. It's like the terminology they use, and so like every listing will say empty but full of flavor, or some kind of like joke like that, where even though it's illegal to sell alcohol on eBay, they're getting away with it by just claiming it's empty and using terms like full of flavor or cellared, or however they put it. And they're selling these full bottles of beer. And eBay, there's no way eBay doesn't know about this, right? They're clearly looking the other way because there's tons of this stuff going on.
But in the same time, if I put up a SNES modded black T-shirt, it'll get taken off because I used the word modded in it. Like, because it was Nintendo and modded in the same auction.
They probably faced pressure from
the bigger companies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that one really pissed me the fuck off, especially because I really, both my friend and I just, he wanted the case. That's it. And, yeah, that's some annoying shit.
You should report them 3 times for canceling orders.
Could you imagine if I say it? Because he obviously knows who I am, or he wouldn't have banned or blocked me right away. Imagine if I'm at the bar in Stanford tomorrow night and this guy walks in. Am I going to have to fucking get into a brawl because some dude was a douchebag on eBay? I think
he'll be all right, Bob.
I think the problem is I would love that. I finally get to confront an internet troll in person. It only happened one other time, and I was a kid. The guy was really small, and I felt I couldn't say anything. I was just like, why would you say those things online? I'm twice your size, and we live a street apart. I didn't know that until now. Yeah, it felt awkward. I'm
sure that guy would probably kick your ass too because you're not a tough guy. So.
Oh no, Zach. He was like your size, so there's definitely no way he was gonna win.
Bob, I'm $180 and 6 feet. I will fuck you up.
Well, anyway, to your point, Bob, I don't know that I just wanted to address this real quick. I don't know that the quantity really has anything to do with it. Like you were essentially saying, though, this guy's throwing a PlayStation with 1,000 ROMs on it, where you're just downloading 1 or 2. I don't think that really matters. It's the selling act that really, like, even if he was selling 1 or 2, it's still like pretty shady behavior. It's not
especially when you have the different tiers.
Yeah. Well, it's just like
all you're paying for.
It's the same thing with that. What was the thing that
Retrovasion?
Oh yeah, the Retrovasion. Yeah.
Yeah, where we got support tickets for this thing because it was so close to our thing, and we're like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I bought your thing, and I can't get the PS1 games ROMs to load. It's like what? Oh, yeah. It's the same thing. They had different tiers. They had the different tiers where it's like you just get like NES, SNES games. It's this much. If you pay extra, you get the Genesis on there. You pay extra, you get the PlayStation, and that got disappeared. That disappeared really quickly.
I mean, at the end of the day, though, is this really any different? I'm not condoning it, obviously, but is this any different than those RetroPie prefab systems that you find on eBay all day for $300 for a RetroPie?
No, I hate that too, by the way.
I do too. I absolutely find it detestable.
It's the same thing, which is probably why there's nothing being done to both.
Right.
Yeah. And here's how weird I look at these things, though. That thing being sold loaded with ROMs, I think, is just shitty, and I think it's somebody capitalizing on something and trying to make money off of other people. I think that it's very amateur and in very bad taste for them to take advantage of an unfortunate situation of people not being able to load their own ROMs, and I don't like that. However, I have no problem with people that say, like, preloaded torrent download for pre-configured Raspberry Pi with all of the shaders built in and your average favorite MAME ROMs. I'm like, oh sweet, thank you for saving me 4 fucking hours and doing all that. So maybe that's my own laziness excusing it, but I definitely don't like the pre-packaged sold ones.
Yeah, I really, to be honest with you, I mean, I think it's very amateur and it's in very poor taste for anybody to. Well, let's just not get into it. We've done this enough.
Yeah.
It's more ignorance than malevolence, in my opinion, though.
No, I don't think so. I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with it at all. I think the majority of the people who do this, much in Bob's credit here, are cognizant of the fact what they're doing is bad. Otherwise, the guy that Bob was dealing with never would have went on a bandway for both Bob 3 times and the guy that Bob was trying to help. Mm-hmm. He knows. He's wise to the fact that what he's doing is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there's the situation where somebody sells a repro cart, honestly not knowing it's a repro cart, not their fault, shit happens, deal with it like adults. Then there's the people that sell, tons and tons of ROMs loaded on a PS2 or a Raspberry Pi. I hate that, especially for a lot of money. But the thing that I don't know why I don't seem to have a problem with is when people say, like, here's a repro of a homebrew hack or something. You're still technically taking intellectual property, but it just the honesty level and especially some of the care that people put into making the boxes and the labels. I don't have a problem with it. Maybe I should. There's a few people on Twitter that love to harass me and call me a hypocrite. Maybe this is what they're talking about, which is fair, I guess, but I don't see those people as maliciously trying to take advantage of other people.
I think there's a distinction, or I think there's a difference in awareness between when somebody hears reproduction cart and when somebody sees PlayStation 2 with 500 games loaded. I think that people, when you hear repro cart, I think that's synonymous with reproduction, and I think people know that that's not an original work. Now, I don't care to pay somebody for their time, for wire, and for soldering and the actual labor. I'm certainly not going to pay for that, for the hack or the repro itself, in the sense that I'm not paying for that IP that was stolen, but I might pay somebody a few bucks if they put it together, like a Rockman Minus Infinity card. I think that straddles a shitty line too, but I would be more inclined to pay somebody to make a very complicated repro like that game is than to pay somebody $250 fucking dollars for a PlayStation 2 with a hard disk that's just loaded with a bunch of hacked games. Like that one fella who goes to those cons around you, Bob, and he peddles those fucking PlayStation 3s loaded. What's his name? Retro Gaming Sharts?
Yeah.
I mean, that guy.
Everything around that is just a little awkward for me. And he came over and introduced himself again and said, like, hey, nice to see you again. I felt really bad because he was very polite and he was very nice. But did he not remember that I'm friends with you guys? Did he not remember Nick just asking, like, hey, how do you feel comfortable selling a PS3 loaded with ROMs?
We know how he feels. He shadow banned me from posting on his YouTube page.
He blocked you and called you a hater, and then he told people the reason he would never do business with me is because I'm too arrogant and this and that, which is true. But who the fuck are you?
Water's wet, the sun is bright. Voultar's a douche. Just
come on. It's just a fact of life.
That's why we get people tuning in.
I mean,
I just that situation makes it worse because he was selling those, but then he was also trying to solicit to game stores locally that he could be their repair guy. So how are you trying to get business from people to win their respect and to try to make your living by repairing stuff for game stores while you're stealing the business out from under them by selling these consoles?
I think he's made it clear, and it's been alleged that he has said that he only does what he does because he knows that he can make money from it, and that is his only interest. Which fair enough, but nonetheless.
Do you think the conventions...
Danielle in the chat asked, didn't he use your board for that shit mod when he was trying to repair the Dujin Dance and then used your board for that?
Oh my god! Well, first of all, let me just say something about this Retro Gaming Sharts person. I have been contacted, and I'm going to name drop because I just think it's the right thing to do. I've been contacted by so many people who have asked me to go behind this guy to repair stuff. And unfortunately, some of this stuff, which Mobius can attest to, Uh, it's it's where this guy's using my boards and my mods, and he's trying to put them in consoles. And in the past, he's done an abysmally terrible job. And it's like, you really shouldn't be doing this if you don't understand what you're doing and you don't know how to do this, because I'm sorry, but I hate it. First of all, anyone can use my mods. That's not within question.
Hold on. I need to amend what you just said there. You shouldn't be basing a business off of doing this unless you really know what you're doing.
You should.
If you're somebody that wants to mod your own console, of course you should.
There should not ever be an exchange of money if you're doing something that you really don't know anything about.
There you go.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And I don't like it. Anyone obviously can buy my mod boards, but I don't like it when there's nothing you can do about it, obviously, but when something that I've done is coupled with the shitty work of somebody else's, even though it's not a poor reflection upon me, I still, in my head, intrinsically feel like it is a poor reflection upon myself. So I don't know how to handle situations like that. But ultimately, it's getting to a point to where I'm tired of getting these emails, and I mean,
it could end up looking bad for you, right? Like, imagine that guy like sells off this console with this crap work in it, and the next person opens it up and sees this board that says Voultar LLC, right?
Well, I don't mean, and listen, I'm not. Believe me, I'm not saying this in any sort of braggadocious way, but he copies a lot of stuff from me in terms of what I do, and he does so in a way that he doesn't understand why I do the things that I do. Jesus.
Wait, you mean you don't do it that way just so you can have a rainbow swirl effect? I thought you just like to look at pretty things. You just let those wires go right over the oscillator, right? Because they look pretty when you do that in the swirl. Totally fine.
There's an aesthetically pleasing component of that. And then
I agree with that. Yeah.
And then there's a functional component of that. The problem is that he's seeing stuff that I do, and he's mimicking the aesthetically pleasing part without understanding any of the rudimentary electronics or theory behind how a lot of this stuff works. And so that's why we have a lot of these problems, and that's why I get a lot of these emails. He creates this bash. People like this tend to create a bastion of themselves where they want to appear as an authority or as somebody who is very well versed, when at the end of the day, it really comes down to somebody copying a few things that this person did, and then copying a few things that that person did. And they try to build and weave this tapestry of bullshit, because all they're capable of doing is copying a few things, and ultimately it gets them in trouble because you can copy things without understanding things. It's like people who design PCBs, I don't want to use the word design very loosely, by chapter and verse, verbatim, following a schematic without understanding what's on the schematic, yet they're routing a board, and then when something goes bad, well, gee, I copied the schematic and I followed it to the T. I don't understand why this isn't working, and it's not my fault because I did copy the schematic. It's the same principle behind both of these things.
Can we talk about that for a minute too, though? Because that's something that I didn't make a mistake on, but the situation and the way the cards fell, I totally could have. And in hindsight, I don't know how I feel about it. So that 7374 board that was based off of Bordy's board, wasn't based off, it was, but it started as my little napkin drawing with Scott. And Bordy designed his, which was way better. I sent that design to an electrical engineer friend of mine that I used to work with, who said, who said the STE thing. Well, I can't tell you if this is safe or not. I can't tell you if this is good or not. There's a million different scenarios in which this could be used. And I just said, is this going to cause damage? And he said, almost definitely not to the console. And I don't know what it's outputting. And in hindsight, the SNES cables, no. Even if you used a cable with no caps in it, it's not great, but it's not going to kill your monitor. So I was lucky in that I did as best as I could before I sold those boards. I did as best I could to make sure that I wasn't going to harm people's equipment. But what if something happened where the electrical engineer was sleepy and didn't look at the design fully and missed something, and I sent something out that a whole bunch of people could possibly have damage on? I don't know what I would do. I would love to just refund everybody, but then how far does that go? What if somebody bought my board and then paid Voultar, $1,000 to install it in their Super Nintendo?
That's about right.
Do I have to refund that too?
Bob, this isn't like specific to, these more hobbyist projects. Like even us selling cables, like we've got, certain tests that we've done to, convince ourselves that what we're selling is not going to blow up somebody's console. But at the end of the day, there could be something out there that we hadn't thought of to put into a test. And, I think, at this point we're, probably reasonably sure things are okay. But selling that first batch, maybe there could have been something we forgot. I mean, it's not.
So as hobbyists, how far do you go? And then how could you tell really after the fact how much damage would have even been done?
I'm sorry, and
it's the nature of this business. There's risks.
Yep.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I didn't hear you talking, Steve.
Well, as a company, I was just going to say, right? If you're an LLC making a product, you find out that that's your only product. You find out that product is damaged. No one's died, no one lost their house, but it's killed something. You shut your company down, you close your LLC, you file bankruptcy, you walk the fuck away.
You're comparing two very different things. You're comparing You're comparing
back that off to a hobby.
Oh God, Jesus! Let me just explain it to you. Jesus Christ. Okay, so you have a hobbyist, and then you have a non-hobbyist. This may piss a lot of people off, and it's not to be highfalutin. This is just the way this is just the way I see it. I don't think a hobbyist should be making anything like that and should be selling anything like that if they don't have the background and they don't have the skill set to do their own due diligences. If you're making a PCB, if you're making anything and you're selling it for money, you're not just giving it away, but you're selling it. There's a transaction of funds. And if you're not competent enough to understand thoroughly what it is that you've made and what it is that you're providing to people, and something goes wrong, you should never have sold it in the first place, and you should never have been in a position to sell it in the first place. So I don't know what constitutes someone as a hobbyist and what really constitutes somebody as a professional in some respects in this sort of scenario. I think it's a competence thing, and I don't think that hobbyists should be selling anything like that, because it's more of a gamble than saying, oh, geez, I installed this thing and it kind of screwed my console up. There's a short to ground here, and it did this, and that. It fucked everything up. Could be a different story. It could be, well, there was a bad short on this line, and there was just enough amperage here that this load did this, and, well, Jesus, the goddamn silicon caught on fire, and there was more than magic smoke there. The bubble wrap that it was encased around actually ignited, and it caused a small fire. I mean, hobbyists shouldn't be selling stuff that they don't understand in the first place. A lot of these people, and I'm not being a dick, but a lot of these people who make these little mod boards and do a lot of these video circuits, I think anyone that knows anything can attest to this and say that they're really shittily done in the community, and that they're done in such a way that if something did go wrong, it's plausible for something to go wrong. I meant to say it's plausible for something to go wrong. Whether they're putting, simple things, whether they're inverting the polarity of a capacitor, whether they're tying an output low, they're shorting that directly to ground. There's a lot of things that can happen. And I know, I don't want to, this is not a segue to talk poorly about the guy, but there was certainly.
Well, hold on. I want to talk about what you're about to say, but I do have two very serious questions. And that everything that you just said is 100% true in a perfect world. But the fact is that a lot of very cool shit has come out of the retro gaming community that has been started by people that don't really know what they're doing, and then it's a great idea, people start to use it, improve upon it, and now it's something amazing. So how would you account for that? And on the other side, what about people that are honest and say, hey, don't really know what I'm doing, here's my shit up on GitHub, let's work on this together and see if we get it better, and then somebody else just makes that board as is, put some components on it, and something happens. Well, I would lean on part two to, it's your own fault if you're the one that makes the board and puts the components on. But seriously, there's been a lot of really awesome stuff that's come out that started really shitty that ended pretty incredible.
Well, can you give a couple of examples?
I don't really want to, because we're kind of putting it under the microscope. But there's...
I guess
you can't make a blanket statement like that without having some specificity. Is all I'm saying.
So in general, I think the hobbyist stuff is fine, and I think you're right. A lot of awesome stuff has come out of it. But if you're going to sell things, which start to get out in larger volumes to people who are not like participating in the development of it. Because I think that's, part of the hobbyist thing is, someone makes a board, throws it up there, other people take a look, they work collaboratively and say, I found these things wrong with it. And that stuff's all awesome. But when you get into that selling aspect, I would really like to see more people go down the road of, forming an LLC, thinking about business insurance, start asking the people who have done that stuff, like what goes into the mass production part of it, start thinking about the design verification testing, start thinking about all this stuff that you really do need to think about, like how can I break this? Where are things going to go wrong? Do all of that before you start selling. I mean, it's a lot of work, but I would really like to see a lot of these hobbyist products do that and be more widely available and be done correctly, rather than
so to the same point, I 100% agree with you, except that's not how so many of these start. So many
don't
of
have
these
to
start
start
like,
that
hey,
way.
I could make one. Oh, hey, well, I want one. Well, I want one. Oh, I guess I'll make 10. Well, no, I want one too. All right, well, I guess I'll make 50. All right, I guess I'm making boards now. And next thing you know, you have 100 out there, and it's like, oh, hey, this was a mistake. This, I screwed this up. You screwed this up. Whatever it is, the board that you sold, regardless of whose fault it is now faulty. And once again, sometimes those products end completely perfect. Like, oh, thank you so much for saving me the trouble and making these things that make my life easier. And when they don't is when it sucks. But
I think you're missing the salient point. The salient point is there is a difference between a hobbyist project that's predicated on just being a hobbyist project that is openly distributed to other people who are interested in it, and between that and somebody who has made something and it's going beyond the realm of being it's passing that threshold from being a hobbyist project to something that's going to be commercialized. And anytime that you pass the threshold to commercialize something, you better do your due diligence, hobbyist or not. And if you don't have the skills or the competency to do your own due diligence while you're commercializing something, you shouldn't be selling it, and you have no business selling it, and you have no business doing anything like that, in my opinion. There's a difference between commercializing something that was originally made for hobbyists, and there's a difference between a hobbyist commercializing something that was originally made for hobbyists. Hobbyists shouldn't be doing that. They should put that into somebody else's hands that they can work with, that can help them along the way.
Yeah, I mean, if it lives on the forums, and even if there is, like, I don't even know that money exchanging hands is that big of a deal. Like if I was on some specialized forum and I threw something up and was like, hey, if you guys want to like help contribute to, getting some of these made, and you guys can, work with me on developing this, whatever, like that's totally cool. 100 of these things on some specialized website is fine, but you got your own website.
Like the RGB to component signal that Steve stole.
Yeah, exactly.
Who did you steal that from again, Steve? I can't remember. Who was that?
Oh, let's skip right over that part.
It was everybody, all the forums. I pieced it together. I copied some stuff from this guy, some stuff from this guy, and I didn't really know what was going on.
Let me just sort of, I don't want to recant what I said, but let me just clarify something. I don't want it to sound like, or I don't want what I have just said to sort of have the appearance that anyone who wants to be a modder or anybody who wants to do this stuff, kind of like what I do or kind of like what other people do, you're stupid and you can't do it and you have no business doing it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you want to get to that point to where you want to do this stuff, please educate yourself, make yourself competent, and make yourself aware of the things that you need to be aware of, and give yourself the ability to do the things that you need to do properly so that you can do this. Otherwise, most likely, you're going to be some guy who dwells on the forums, or you're going to be some guy who sells on eBay. And I'm not saying that's across the board for everyone who sells on eBay, but I think we got a pretty good idea of how things go when it comes to this genre on eBay. So that's not what I'm not saying anything bad against anyone who wants to do this. I'm just saying you better know your stuff, or at least you better know somebody that knows their stuff. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
And if Zach can figure it out, like
anybody
can really.
Anybody can do this. Look at Nick up there.
I mean, would you be even feel comfortable like taking in people's consoles if you didn't have like a proper business with some insurance to protect you if somebody were to sue you for doing whatever.
I mean, people do this all the time on the forums and stuff. It's different if you're doing 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe 3 or 4 every other few weeks. But if you're doing anything in volume, it's not even that I'm worried about. You need to be legitimate. I mean, you need to be responsible and you need to be legitimate. So if the volume gets to that point, yes, absolutely.
It's almost if sorry, finish your thought.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve, please.
It's almost as if like hobbyists are more prone to risk and should implement the risk minimizing things that Nick mentioned with the forming LLC and business insurance. It's like they're not as experienced, so they probably have higher risk of making something that's not fully fleshed out and thought of in all sorts of weird circumstances. But I want to hear what Renee thinks.
Well, I was going to say, we're talking about the merchant side all the time here, the hobbyists who are selling these boards, and the small time guys who are trying to make a simple project, a simple video board, a simple whatever it is, right? But I think the other side of that is myself as a consumer when I purchase these things, because I do go out and buy some of these boards. Like when I first bought the Master System FED mod from Tim Worthington, Tim Worthington wasn't some super well-known guy, right? And even if you order something from Tim Worthington, it comes with a handwritten address on it. There's no shipping label production or anything like that, right? So he's clearly doing this out of his basement. But as a consumer, I understand what I'm buying at the same time, right? I know this isn't some major corporation with hundreds of employees, whatnot. I understand this is some guy trying to get a product out because he likes retro consoles just like I do, right? So if it goes wrong, I'm not blaming Tim Worthington or anyone else that I might have purchased something from under those conditions, because I understand the risk that I'm taking at the same time. I mean, we're talking about the risk for the hobbyists, but I think the risk goes both ways. You need to understand what you're buying at the same time.
That's true.
That's I have a feeling that you think like that because you're someone who are someone who was a merchant. You've experienced that side. There's a lot of people who don't experience that side. And although you're correct and they should bear risk,
yeah,
we live in like this Amazon controlled society now where all risk on the consumer end is gone. And so people expect it.
Yeah, you can return anything for any reason at any time.
Yeah, I got to be honest. If I didn't work at that company that I worked at for almost 10 years, where I got to, where I had to go through and like see the technical side of things, see the manufacturing, see how companies can get screwed over, I wouldn't have had this perspective. But I agree with Renee, where if I buy anything hobbyist related, I completely 100% am under the assumption that this may or may not damage something. That's why, because of you lovely fuckers, I test everything on my scope now that I brought home. I got a couple super guns home. I didn't even plug it into any of my main equipment. I plugged it right into this piece and that, tested it all. But if I never went through that, if I was just the IT guy in the back room or something, maybe I would have that eBay mentality of like, well, you're the seller, I'm the buyer, so you owe me. I don't think I would. I feel like I've always been a nerd at heart, clearly, but like, maybe I would have.
There are people who think like that who haven't done merchants, haven't produced stuff. There are people. It's just the majority is the entitled consumer, I think. Go ahead, Zach.
I think everything that we're talking about it comes full circle to what Steve was wanting to talk about, or he propositioned it the other day.
Do we have time?
I mean, this is 2 seconds what I'm about to say. The care that, the perspective that Renee has is based on the fact that Renee has experienced both worlds personally. And the consumer, for the most part, in its most generic form, doesn't have the same perceptions that I, Steve, or Nick, or Renee, or Bob would have. And so, therefore, it's the same sort of principle that says, we spend all this, or it's the same sort of principle behind
all of the time and the effort and the patience and the penis pumps that we spend to make sure that we're making a really good product and that we're really covering all of our bases, it goes unseen and unheard by probably 98 or I don't know 90% of the people who are customers of ours. They don't care about the stuff that we do. They just want it to work. And maybe 10% of the people actually see what we do and the effort that's put into this stuff, and they say, wow, you guys really did this right, or you did your best to do it right, and I really appreciate that. I think all of that becomes full circle because the 10% of the people who do care, well, there's 90% of the people who don't care. So they really, I don't think they can share Renee's perspective because
I don't
of
even.
that.
Yeah, it's, phrasing it that way. I totally agree with what you're saying, but I don't even think they should have to care. Like, right? Like most people, they should just want to buy something from a company and have it work and not have to think about it.
Turnkey.
You
Turnkey.
wouldn't be able to get through life if every purchase you made you had to like understand the company and appreciate all the work that like you just have no time in your life for it. You have to kind of at some point trust that what you're getting.
Hey, I just heard a bad sound. I'll be back in a minute.
Somebody's dead in New York.
Who's getting murdered?
I think you're right, Nick. But I think what the products that we're talking about right now, they're not the doorbell that you go find at Lowe's. This is a very niche sort of subset of products that I'm sorry, I do think command a little consumer knowledge. Like if someone's going to buy an RGB modification, or if somebody's going to buy a component cable for their RGB capable system, I think they're required that commands a little prerequisite knowledge that is far more than that of somebody who's going to Lowe's to replace their doorbell or their. You understand what I'm saying? I mean,
we're on the.
Come on.
We're on the line there, I guess. I mean, the modding stuff, sure, is certainly like anything that involves cracking open the system and starting to solder stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely you should understand at least the person that's doing the work or whatever. But I don't know. I think our stuff, I would expect more people to be just this should work, and not have to think too much about it. Certainly, like anything that like once it's on Amazon in a nice pretty package, I don't expect that people should have to think too hard about like take the Eon product. Like they have a really nice package. It's a nice package. Both of those guys have nice packages, but they have.
What did I come back to?
You should have stayed away.
They sell their device on Amazon in a nice box. It's well designed. The customer should not have to go research into Eon like too much as to like that's just not going to happen. It's not practical. They're going to expect this. They're going to plug this thing in and it's going to work. And I mean, that is what happens.
Would you say that to somebody who had a SNES Mini and then they bought a component cable from you?
Yeah, that's why I say our stuff is kind of probably more on the line there. But that's why we caveat that stuff all the hell over our webpage. And
right, but you provide you provide some exposition. So therefore, I think we're coming back to the same place. I understand what you're saying, but I think I thoroughly understand what you're saying. But I think that I think still on the consumer-esque side, it still commands, regardless of how turnkey those cables are. I still think it commands a considerable amount of knowledge. Maybe I'm wrong. Chat, do you think I'm right, or what do you think? Chat.
Well, when I brought this up, I brought it up in the context of how do you balance spending like thorough R&D time into stuff or release a product earlier. Like, I mean, there's so many other things that can come out and they could all have wrong signals coming out of them. Mm-hmm. And then yours comes out later, and although that one might work 80% of the time, there's this 20% of cases where it's outputting the wrong signals, it doesn't work, but then like your product, you spend more time and actually followed specifications and did all that stuff, works like 99% of the time.
But you weren't first to market, so
you weren't first to market, and all the other ones that were made by people who don't understand what they're even making,
right,
get all the praise. So like, how do you balance that?
I love this debate, by the way, because this is one where I'll always sort of lean to one side, even knowing that it's definitely wrong. But it's one of these things. Oh boy, we'll get back to this one in a second. Retro Gaming Arts just joined the chat now.
Oh, hey.
Hey, buddy. Man, I wish you were here like an hour ago. Let me just finish my thought, and then we'll decide where we're going with this. Honestly, if you have a great idea that's 90% finished, that there's definitely 10% of problems, and you release that idea early, and there's another team working on making it 100% definitely, regardless of what this idea is, it's a roll of the dice. Sometimes that extra 10% means, oh, I get video flicker. Oh, I get, a weird audio pop now and then. Not a big deal. Other times it's a fucking huge deal. So I always, and even in my last company, I found that whole, I tried to always find that when is the time to just pull the plug and say, do it. And I've been wrong many times on that, but I've never been wrong to the point where, a huge recall, like one of those. So
well, here's you made an assumption there. You made an assumption where the person who says, "Oh, this is 90% right, and it's 10% not right," I think that most of the time they think that that 90% is 100%. Right. That is ignorance over knowing the situation and just making design decisions and time decisions. That there is people who are either ignorant or incompetent where they think they have 100% product and they release that and they don't, because they don't understand what they're doing. They're not thorough. They don't put time into doing tests and research and stuff like that. So I think it kind of changes your analysis a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree with that.
I guess it's I think the thorough nature wins out in the end. I mean, I think Apple has proven that in a lot of ways. They've let other companies come to market first with things and then won anyway because they spent more time on their product perfecting it. I mean, if our main audience for what we make was the guys that are on the forums, the real hardcore nerds that have been doing this stuff for a long time, have had SCART, they've known about this stuff, they look at us and are like, this is nothing new. We've had boards to do these conversions before. People have come out with things before. If that was our main audience, I think we would have been dead in the water. But we were going for a broader audience, and to reach that broader audience, I think you need to have spent more time on it and made sure you hit the 100%.
I don't think that's true. I'm sorry. I don't think that's true. I don't think that the success of your business was reliant on the broad spectrum of your consumer, and not if you were only if the idea that if you were pretty much only catering to that small forum segment. I think those people, honest to God, Nick, like the component cables just as much as the guy who just wants a plug and play for his system.
No, I'm not saying that there aren't people in this kind of our small niche community that I know there are people that like our products. I'm just saying other people beat us to market with solutions for doing all this stuff. And
yeah. Okay, I'm sorry.
That didn't matter for kind of a broader swath of, people who want to play old system on TV, right?
Okay. Well, why don't we just use the example that we talked about, because it's not like it's a secret. It's certainly no insider info that you guys have been talking about a Dreamcast cable for a while. And I knowing a little bit more of the story behind it and reading Steve's whole thing about the sync combining and all that, I actually, for as much as I love busting both of your balls, I'm really looking forward to waiting for a really good solution that solves all of the problem that we have with Dreamcast stuff.
Yeah, keep waiting, Bob.
But if you had just put those component cables out 4 years ago and said, hey, they're probably not going to work in most cases. Please treat these as use at your own risk. It's definitely safe. You're not going to blow out anything with them. But, you might get some sync issues. The title screen might look all fucked up. Deal with it knowing you're buying these at your own risk. You probably would have sold a shitload of them. So that's the line where I don't
know. I wouldn't have wanted to sell a shitload of them because when things start going wrong, then we have to deal with a shitload of returns and emails and complaints. Like you can't reach the broader audience. You can reach the guys who are willing to tinker and deal with those issues, but the broad consumer who, like we talked about, just wants to buy something that works. When it doesn't work, it's a pain for us to deal with.
So that's the other side of this, is if you guys had just said that, like, fine, we have this fucking annoying friend Bob that said, just do it. In all honesty, like, even if you had done everything right, even if you absolutely said, like, with big letters, even if you shipped the cables and you opened the box and you said, no returns, buy at your own risk, people are still, if they don't like them, they're just going to talk all about it on Reddit. And next thing you know, you're the company that ships cables that don't work, even though 1% of people might have a problem with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I don't know that there's an answer to this argument.
Yeah.
Well, there's not.
Yeah, that's why I want to talk about, because I think it's interesting. There's some threshold somewhere, but it's undefined.
That's right.
You can't define it. I want to know what Renee thinks.
I already gave my opinion on.
He's already talked about it, man. Where the hell are you, Steve?
Yeah.
Well, you said you had some things to talk about in just the general balancing R&D versus releasing.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was kind of zoned out here. We're still on the discussion of the previous topic, and all this time I'm thinking about. All this time, you guys are talking about hobbyist projects and whatnot, and I'm thinking about Metal Jesus Rocks' poor GameCube that was busted by that shitty, HDMI converter. And I was like, such a sad event.
He got a new one. He went down to the shelter and he picked out a new GameCube.
The shelter.
No, you're right. Balancing R&D is really difficult. Zach and I tried to start a nice and organized way of dealing with the Mister project, and it didn't turn out the way I was expecting, and I was kind of disappointed about that. There is a threshold in the size of a project where you need to think about long-term manageability and how the project will be developed by more than one person, and sadly, I don't think a lot of people shared my vision on that. So that's all I have to say. I'm gonna be polite. I've decided I'm going to be polite about this. So.
Well, I think that your dilemma there is just, and that's all I'll say. But I mean, I think you're right, Steve. I think we could go back and forth on this, and though I don't think our conversations here would ever deliver a definitive answer or metric for measuring these things, I think it's interesting to talk about it because it gives everybody unique perspectives into really what goes into maybe what all of us do, and maybe it just gives them a little insight, so they have just a more thorough understanding, or at least more of an understanding, so they can inform themselves to their own opinions or form their own opinions. So I think I'm glad we kind of talked about it, but stuff like this right here, you got to be careful. You got to make sure that you're doing this stuff right. And Bob, I don't know if you wanted to talk about it or not, but what I think you started to talk about it, but then we got rudely interrupted by Nick.
Yeah, you know what? Let me just finish the thing. Off topic, 2 seconds. I don't want to stop what we're about to talk about, but Delta X55. Anybody who saw the scan lines from the Game Boy Advance video, they were YouTube compressed the fuck out of them. Especially if you look at the water, it was like a solid color. So please don't judge the scan lines based on that. But what you were just alluding to before is when we were talking about the different modding techniques, the different things people do. The two things that came up recently, the one was the 7374 boards where the unused input was, output was, well, there was no input. So the output was tied low instead of high, right?
They kept the input floating on the fourth channel. They kept the input floating, and then they shorted the output directly to ground. Oh my god, dude, what the fuck? Yeah, that's it.
The other way would have been fine.
Yeah, that would have been appropriate.
Grounding the input and floating the output.
So let me just, for my own personal curiosity, what would happen if you left both floating?
Nothing.
That's what I would have done.
Yeah, because the input is tied low
by default.
For those
800
kilohertz.
What is the worst thing that could happen? Is it just that it generates more heat? We all know heat electronics is bad. Or is this actually sending some kind of high voltage to your console, your cable, or whatever?
Well, there is no high voltage to it, but you know what I mean. I don't know, Steve.
It's like sending, I think, roughly 300 millivolts into ground. So there's a bunch of, it's the current output of that last channel is maxing out, and whatever protection circuitry they have in there to prevent it from blowing up is probably activated, and it's meant to be, usually those things are meant to be like a temporary fault, but like it's permanently tied like that. You're operating beyond the specs of the chip, so
you're hitting the rail 24/7.
So when I looked at it, and as we all know, both in the chat and on this video, I'm very clearly the dumbest of the bunch. But when I looked at this, it seemed like it would be something that would kill the mod board faster than it would. Once again, I don't know what faster means. Maybe it's 20 years instead of 30. Maybe it'll die next month instead of 20 years from now.
Much faster than that. But
it didn't seem like something where if you put this in your TurboGrafx, it's going to murder your TurboGrafx by the end of the year.
I wouldn't say that.
So there's, I guess, two things that are happening. That, it's all on the mod board, or most of it's on the mod board. The amplifier will heat up because it's dumping current out into ground, but it's sourcing that current from the power that it's powering. So however many milliamps or whatever you're dumping through is coming from the console's power supply. But I don't know how much the current that is, and I don't know if that is enough to change anything.
Yeah, I mean,
and that might even vary on motherboard revision too.
Go ahead, Renee.
I was going to say, who knows what the failure mode of the 7374 is when the output is shorted like that? Does it, eventually die catastrophically, and then you blow the fuse in your TurboGrafx as well, right? So it could be bad.
Yeah, the problem is it's a hypothetical, Bob, and it's worst case scenario. In my opinion, for things like this, it's always worst case scenario, because you don't know.
This stuff really scares me because it makes me realize how unbelievably lucky I was that the board that Bordy designed was electrically completely fucking safe in every way. So all the ones that I sold, it's like, unless you're modding that SNES in a bathtub with your power surge protector teetering on the side, like, you're fine, we're good, like nothing's gonna go wrong. So
tying an output ground is a flag that, well, it's either a obvious, like, just mistake, like they drew it wrong, or it's a flag that there is a misunderstanding of how this stuff works.
There's a misunderstanding of how to use ERC in the software.
Error rules check, guys. Come on.
I mean, you don't know what the software this was designed in, and if the schematic symbol had those ERC check things set.
I can see leaving a ground floating. I can see leaving a supply floating. I can't see somebody deliberately tying the output to ground on mistake.
So not being an electrical engineer, that makes no sense whatsoever to my brain at all. It makes none. And I guess in this situation, I was told that the person who built the boards downloaded the schematic, sent them to somebody else, and said, "Could you make me this?" But once again, even being a severe layman, I would look at that and be like, why is this to ground? Doesn't need to be to ground. And I would at least look at the data sheet, and it would, like the low pass filter, you have to have that pin as grounded or 5 volts. If you don't, it certainly won't hurt your console, but it might screw with the 7374. Definitely no issue with the console itself. But
the explanation that was given to me was that the person who routed the board was. Are we going to name names, or are we not going to name names, Bob? I mean, it's up to you.
I mean, if you guys think that people's consoles,
I don't think it's relevant.
It's not relevant.
I don't think it's relevant.
Okay, so
keep going.
Okay, so the way that I understood this was that the person who drew the schematic simply sent that schematic to a person to route the board, and that the person who routed the board simply followed the schematic chapter and verse, and that's what came, and that's why we got what we got. So I think if I'm understanding that correctly, and that's really what happened, this is a matter of somebody blindly following a schematic that was drawn out, wasn't paying attention to the design or to what they were doing, and didn't know that was bad. So I think that it's a matter of, I think it's a complete lack of understanding.
I mean, it could have been something where it was drawn weird, where like there's like sometimes when you draw the lines and you want a node there and it's not explicitly there.
Yep.
It could have. You never know.
There's a million things.
I mean, I have a bad mod work video series that's for bad mod work. I don't see something like this. It needs to be addressed, but this is not. People want to equate this. This is not the same thing as that video series where I review really bad mod work.
I have a serious question about that. I do want to end. I'm going to say the depressing thing first because I don't want to bum everybody out. But the truth is that, that whole "you could be anything you want to be" isn't quite true. I know that I'll never be able to be a ballerina. Luckily, I've never wanted to be. Maybe whoever's designing these circuits should just give up. I don't know, Bob.
I'm gonna be the new starting.
I could be a pretty princess, but I couldn't be a ballerina.
I'm gonna be the new starting power forward for the Miami Heat.
So, what do you think your next bad modding video would be then?
I don't know. There are so many things that are sitting on my table, and I get so many requests to go. I don't know. I don't know.
Wait, hold on. Can I interrupt really quickly? Because I want people to know this, because people always get the bad fucking... people have a bad opinion of you for this. As much as I also love to tease all of you fuckers, Zach will jump in to a complete stranger and defend them if he feels like they're being picked on. I've seen it before. I've seen people tweet you and say, "Hey, look at this crap that I bought. Don't you think it's terrible?" And you were like, "No, that's not crap. This is why this person did that. You shouldn't be like..." You equally jump on people for good as bad. People always misunderstand the way you word things. Maybe it's your accent. I don't know. But before you even get into that, I just want people to know that I've watched him equally shit on people trying to start trouble as he does people who make terrible mods.
Well, I think you could have
poor understanding of the English language. He uses the Queen's English.
Soldering.
I think you could have consolidated and condensed that down, Bob, to just simply saying that I'm a hero.
No, it's definitely not the words I would use.
So real quick, I mean, I did a poll the other day, and I did a 24-hour poll. Do you guys want to see the bad mod work videos continue, or is it old? Is it tired? Overwhelmingly,
you did a poll, and your sample set was all the people who chose to follow you.
Yeah. Worst poll ever.
Well, okay, so things might be a little skewed, Steve. So
that was well fucking said, my friend.
I don't. The bad mod work videos were never to be. They were never intended to be malicious. They were never intended to be bullying.
You did one with me about me.
I only do those. There is a certain criteria that has to be met. I'm going to explain this very quickly because I know we're getting tired. In order for me to do a bad mod work video, you have to be a repeat offender. Now, I don't mean you need to do 2 or 3 bad systems. You need to do a series of bad
console mods. The second prerequisite to me even considering a video is that you have to be charging money. You have to have a money exchange. If somebody asks you,
not just a one-off.
We're talking about somebody who is trying to operate a business doing this.
Right.
And not somebody who's just trying to help out a friend or somebody who's just, trying to help somebody. That's very different. And I would never cast my large cock down upon them. But
you've jumped in and helped those people. Never shit on them.
So there are some prerequisites here, just like Dujin Dance. Dujin Dance, I got a lot of flack for. Dujin Dance, he totally did a 180. He changed his game, and my God, look at the stuff that Dujin Dance does now.
Yeah, way better.
Impeccable in terms of the stark differences. So I just wanted to say that. Now the next video, I
can't help thinking about that. You said like repeat offender. It's like you're the DA and the cops are going, all right, we got a multiple felony here on a turbo duo, and this one on the SNES Mini. Oh, I can't show you the pictures, but
I think rather than just announcing a video, do you think it would be better if I ran a poll and let the people decide? Because maybe that makes it more diplomatic.
You already did, and they already did.
No. I mean, a poll of whether or not I should do it. If I gave people a series of options, do you want me to do this console by this person, or this person? Would it be more diplomatic and more fair for me to do it that way?
I think you should.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think you should like name the console or who did it. I think you should
post pictures.
I think you should. Your poll should be based on like what's wrong with it, like a design flaw versus a routing flaw versus
so the only problem is
that
with the internet now, especially in the retro gaming scene, everybody's going to know anyway. Like when you did the Crayola King video, I'm very glad that we all dropped that name because that person had the attitude of, it's wrong, whatever, I'll dump it on eBay, as if people that aren't in the same retro gaming community he's in aren't going to see that and buy that. So, but I don't think you could keep anything a secret. I think everybody would know. Although it's probably the classier option to not drop a name. It doesn't really fucking matter.
But here's the thing. In the name dropping, I don't like doing that so much because I think it's not bullying, but I don't want to bully anybody. I really don't want to bully anybody. But if it's sparing somebody from getting some really shitty work done, does that merit the name drop?
I don't know. I think that's something you have to decide for yourself, whether you think it's prolific enough to try to stop or not.
See, I don't know, but okay. Well, I tell you what. I think we're gonna kick back up. I think we're going to kick back up the bad modding videos. I think I'm going to be name dropping the fuck out of people. So,
sweet.
Welcome back, bitches. Welcome back.
Well,
I'm back.
I don't think we'll do questions this time since we
I'm just kidding.
Totally ran over. We'll probably save them to our Christmas special.
I'm kidding, by the way. I'm
holiday special.
Yeah, our Hanukkah special.
There you go, Voultar.
Listen, don't do that, Bob, please.
But before we go, I do want to do one quick question from the possible group topics, and I want to hear everybody's opinion. Will Paprium ever exist?
Nope, because I didn't make the board.
What are your Nick? I gotta ask. What are your thoughts on string theory?
Twice the distance from the center to each end, or one end. I fucked it all up. God damn it!
Have another beer, Bob, please. You're out of your element.
That's a good question.
Well, anyway, I hope that you've all gotten refunds on your Paprium because the company doesn't exist anymore. So
I went down with the ship.
You went down with the ship.
Yeah, me too. He's got my money.
Hashtag me too.
Poor bastards.
Oh, he's got my Pure Solar money too for Dreamcast.
So just
you ordered Pure Solar from them and they never sent it?
Oh yeah, like that's they didn't make any more because of this.
That's awesome.
So hold on a second. They dissolved their email accounts, And has there been any news articles post their disappearance?
No,
or is it...
I mean, they haven't posted on Twitter or I think they're mainly in the past have used Facebook. I check there every once in a while to see. They haven't responded to anybody. So I think they're probably
done.
Finished.
Well, I blame Mobius Strip Tech for this. That bastard.
I'm just like, so excited that I got my Tanglewood because I'm just so excited to never be able to play it. So.
Yeah, I still got to order that. Maybe I'll just steal your copy. I can't wait for Xenocrisis to come out with Renee's awful joke in there. Can't believe you got
that went through so many levels of QC before it actually came out. Oh.
Are you taping over the proms, UV proms, Renee?
I'm not doing any of that.
I wonder if they actually black tape them. I wonder if they black.
I showed you the e-prom.
I didn't see it. The black one.
No, I mean
it says QC Pass. There's a QC Pass sticker over the window.
Yeah,
That's
what I meant was I'm not actually doing that. I ordered the factory to do that.
Okay, well, you keep ordering them. Next question.
Yeah, but Xenocrisis, all the boards have shipped as well, and they're Flash.
Good.
Sweet.
Parallel penis pumps.
Oh, thanks to Jay for the super chat where he says Voultar is a hero and my money proves it.
Guys, I'm going to be doing some awesome video game streams here very soon, probably even tonight. So save all of your money. Save all of your money. Stop sitting these fucking bastards with your money. Just wait. Give me 30 minutes and we'll be live.
Alrighty.
Can I be Andy Richter?
You can be on there. You need
Sweet.
to gain a few weight, a few pounds. Bob, you wanna take the role?
I mean, I have more beer. I could hang out.
Okay.
Alrighty, I think we've talked and we'll try to do one of these in December. Hopefully we can find a time that works for everyone.
Real quick, Nick, is there are we going to do you think one episode in December and have it be the Christmas special?
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I'll be down for that, boys.
Sounds good. I don't know what we'll do. We'll probably just hang out, not talk too much tech. Maybe we'll get to all the questions that we skipped over, but
post questions. Tons of questions.
Yeah, we'll have a good time.
We should do like a retro roundtable answers the most popular Google questions.
That's a good idea, Renee. I never thought of that.
Is the moon landing fake?
Yes. The smoking cigarette man was behind all that.
All
Season 11, X-Files. Where the hell were you?
I love that, but I tried to type that in, and nothing came up in mine. Oh.
Jesus, Bob.
I was hoping something really crazy would come up when I typed in "is Voultar."
Bob, are you still abusing prescription medication?
I have never abused them.
That's awesome.
Alrighty.
No, it's not, Steve.
Thanks everyone for joining. And
yeah, thanks everybody. I always love to see everybody in the chat too. We appreciate everybody coming and watching it live.
I appreciate everybody coming all over my face. VoultarStreams.com.
We'll edit that out in post.
Covered in banana chips that he's eating while on microphone.
I don't give two fucks.
Oh, before I go, if you haven't already, you should totally pick up this book by Evan Amos. It's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I have it too.
I mean, if they give it
Me
to me
too.
for free, I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, really cool. If you've
Yeah,
ever seen a picture
honestly.
of a video game console on Wikipedia, this is the guy that took it, most likely. So,
I'm going to pick it up, honest to God.
yeah, it's really cool. I think I got it for like $16 on Amazon. So,
No kidding. That cheap?
yeah, hardcover too, man.
Oh, damn. I got to get that now.
So cool.
You better do it before they sell out.
No shit.
Yeah, they already sold out once and they made a second batch.
Christmas.
I hope that... There you go. Okay, I'm going to order it. Anyways, guys, I had a really fun time tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the stream. I think we had a really good podcast, and we kept it kind of light but serious at the same time. So I want to thank everybody. 150 people. Can you believe it? Even at the very end.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
all
know
appreciate the shit out of that, by the way.
What is wrong with you people?
Except Steve.
Go do something productive.
Yeah, like Dreamcast component cables.
Yeah, somebody's got to get to it.
Yeah, someone's
Yep.
got to do it.
Yeah.
Nick, go math us with that.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
go dazzle us with your maths.
Maybe next time.
All right.
All right, we'll see you guys in December.
Okay,
Yeah.
guys, take it easy.
Adios.
See ya.
Voultar.